When we here at the center went into this, we had a kind of limited vision, I think, of what we ought to be doing. I think Harry said it a little earlier that we really had in mind getting Hilbert Hall out of there and basically replacing it with a new building right on that very same spot. And I can still remember the day that Harry and his friends came in with their first idea, their first drawings about what they wanted to do, put it in front of us, and I think it took us 5 minutes to figure out what in the heck we were looking at, because he had this building configured in a place that we had just never imagined putting the building. So that was really an eye-opener.
What was the function of the building to be?
The function of the building was to replace Hilbert, have the same number of offices, and to provide a new auditorium to seat 90 or 100 people, and also to take care of some of our administrative needs. So I think we had that idea from the beginning. Those were going to be the components. But we thought it was going to sit right there where Hilbert was sitting. And thanks to Harry and his colleagues, we've got a much better situation. The process of selecting the architect was sort of sheer chaos, I'd say. Harry doesn't know a lot about this, and I'm not sure how much we want him to know. It's like making sausage, I guess. We started thinking about it, the officers. There were, I would say, wildly divergent views about where we should go. When Harry's name came up, I can remember people saying, of course, from the very beginning, Dave Schramm and I knew exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted Harry. But others weren't so sure. I can remember things being said like, oh, he's too big for us, you know, he's not in size. Or he's too artsy, or we'll never control him, and all of which turned out to be true, but no.
As advertised.
As advertised. So that was an interesting discussion, went on for quite a long time, but I think the more all of us got to know Harry and his people, and the more we started to see some of his ideas, even the skeptics were won over. And by the end, it was completely unanimous.
Well, the next thing that happened, of course, Tom asked me to chair the building committee, effectively making me project manager. I said no, and 2 days later I thought about it more and said yes. And it was a lot of fun. Working with Harry is an artistic experience and very, very stimulating. And of course, occasionally we did have to say no, like to the rusty tin roof and those god-awful chairs you got us. Oh. But in general, it was a marvelous experience. Now, one thing Harry had to take the lead on, but I had to go with him, was going to the city council and the planning and zoning commission and presenting the building in the face of some opposition. There were two very vocal neighbors. Since one of them is mercifully gone, I can mention him by name. It was Mac Cunningham.
Right.
Yeah, and he would come with volumes. And it cost us a lot of extra money, maybe $50,000 extra, to have to design alternate plans and show the city and all of that. I'll just say one incident. Former Mayor Bill Sterling, wanting to be helpful as always, came and presented an alternative. He said, why don't we put the building like Harris Hall, partway underground? And Mayor Bennett, who was much on our side, asked me what I thought of that. And I said, I won't take that idea back and even present it to my colleagues. He said they would be so offended that what the city thinks of us is they'd like to have us underground. But there's a second reason. I said, why do you think we're here in Aspen? Physics is a spiritual pursuit, and we like to see the views. We're inspired by it. And that won. Yeah. But that was fairly typical of what we were up against for meeting after meeting after meeting.
There was a period there when they didn't want to see buildings, I think. They were just frightened of everything that was being presented, not just the physicists, and then we proved that we could do it with Harris Hall, so that was, led them on. They took everything from now on can just disappear. But we finally prevailed too that this thing was going to be the height of it was very much dictated by the people across the street, and who really gained what was being used as a place to store snow and park cars occasionally and that sort of thing. And they gained a really attractively landscaped foreground and a building that you can't see, and a few things like that. They did all right. Their property values didn't sink as far as I know.
We had a building committee, and I wasn't in town, but I tried to meet every 2 weeks. And maybe it was more like once a month, but we tried for every 2 weeks with Harry and with, incidentally, we haven't mentioned the excellent contractor, George Shaw. He's I don't think you're going to get a chance to interview him, but he is a real gem to work with, and his people are.
His crew they were great,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
were very good about controlling the cost too.
Yeah,
They
they really
recognized the need for that, and they frustrated the heck out of me a lot, but they were great. I mean, and they did what they said they were going to do.
And they
which is
did it pretty
amazing.
much on schedule.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
really amazed me.
Yeah, yeah. And we should not also forget Brad Zeigel from my office, who
Yes,
was
that's right.
my point man. When
Yeah.
everybody says my people,
Have
the
a number of
people
good
that they're
people.
referring to, the main one was Brad, who
mhm.
was also really, really good. good.
But we met with Harry, tried to meet every 2 weeks, at least once a month, and a number of other members of this committee would come from faraway places. Dave DeYoung, Peter Kaus was there frequently. Jeremy was kibitzing, usually sitting in the background, commenting negatively on what we were doing. But it was
No,
quite a
that's
committee.
No trouble dragging Dave Schramm here, I remember. But,
Yes, Dave came a few times, and it was a wonderful process.
yeah.
I can remember coming out in January in the middle of the snow and just putting on my boots and climbing all over the construction site and having a hell of a good time. The
Yeah.
minute we broke camp here at the center, they were
That was
breaking
it.
ground.
And it was
Yeah.
finished in time for the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a little muddy when the people showed up in June, but I think we had some
That explains-
temporary walks and things,
Mhm.
and it was a miracle.
We had
They
wonderful,
did what
wonderful
they said they were going to do.
parties, and as I
Yeah.
recall, it was quite a great celebration. We had before that we had to raise some funds, as I recall.
We
There were
did.
several,
We did.
events, and this was new to the physicists.
Right.
With other organizations that we work with had fine-honed machinery for raising funds, like the music festival and so on, and the fundraising for this was something that people had to learn. They did it, I think, in general, rather wonderfully, because it was new and they had that sort of, I say they, you, all, but and one of the occasions we had Stephen Hawking here, and sort of as a star attraction. He was attending the center, and I had the opportunity to present the plans of the building to him, and he responds to a conversation. He barely moves. Almost nothing moves at all in his body, and I wasn't quite sure. It was kind of like talking to a recorder or something. There was no human response, and so I went on and on about the presentation, not quite sure how it was being received, and then by the time I stopped talking, he had assembled a paragraph with his computer and then clicked it, and the synthetic voice said, well, this is really a wonderful, brilliant design. It looks like it's going to be quite terrific and so on, and center should advance the physics, but there's one really important basic thing wrong. He said, where do people eat? And at first I didn't understand, but then later it was clear that at Cambridge, of course, a lot of the dialogue happens at the dinner table. They all have to go.
He was looking for a
Right.
Cambridge high table.
So he was looking for a Cambridge high table, right? Exactly. I said, well, where's that going to go? So maybe you guys should think
thought.
about that. I mean,
Maybe we
the
should have
picnics
high
are
tables.
nice, but I mean,
The officer's a little higher.
right, exactly. Anyway, I thought that was a very interesting response.
Maybe I can just let Harry know that I'm pretty sure of this, that at the time that we signed the contracts, whatever the contracts were with you, This is something that Dave Schramm kept to ourselves and didn't tell anybody else. We didn't really have enough money to pay you. It was still coming in.
Now, I was used to that because my initial contact with this place was through George Stranahan.
We were close.
And my first job in Aspen was the Aspen Community School.
Uh-huh.
And they strung us along. We had the whole building designed complete through construction documents, not right when they signed the contract, right, all the way through construction documents before they had any money to pay us. So I'm used to this. This is
We had very positive derivatives.
I wasn't too worried. It was. I should just explain that from my point of view, it was dreams coming true. I was dealing with, the most wonderful, intelligent client you could possibly imagine, and the opportunity to create spaces where that people work and do things is part of what I've based my career on, and whether it's artistic or music or here physics, it's all the same thing. That's the thing that intrigues me, is the relationship and the engagement between the architecture and the process of that people are doing, and so for me it was absolutely wonderful job. So.
Let me add to that. A month ago I had house guests here from Kansas, and showed them all the wonders of Aspen and the surrounding mountains and the Physics Center. And as the fellow was leaving, he said, "You know what I enjoyed the most? The Physics Center." He said, walking through there, seeing that space with all the people indoors and outdoors, all this energy devoted to solving some of the most profound problems in the world, that place just blew me away.